Chapter 2. The Quest. Shortly after dawn, the knights prepared to embark on their journey north. Virtually all of Idon had gathered to see them off, everyone except for Princess Lydia, that was. She remained in her room, where she had been waiting all morning for Idon to finally come and propose to her. But he never came, and there she stayed, pouting the day away. After several hours of crying, her mind began to clear, and as it did, a plan came to her. She refused to give up on Idon, for she truly loved him, and she believed in her heart that he loved her. However, Idon's reluctance to make her his bride made Lydia feel as though she was being taken for granted. Perhaps the introduction of a little competition would bring a quicker proposal from the commander. 5 knights had volunteered to join Cerberus in his quest. Of the 6 warriors in the party, only Idon, Cerberus, and Errol were from the school of combat taught by the late Diaxes. However, Idon had already been set in his ways before falling under Diaxes' leadership, and Errol had been largely ignored by the former commander. That left Cerberus, who despite his deep and well-publicized hatred of the traitor, still displayed signs of his influence. However, the prince had come to use this skill to defeat the remnants of Diaxes' regime. Compared to the renowned warrior and adventurer Cerberus and his squire turned knight Eberhard, the other warriors, with the exception of Idon, appeared to be merely boys with fancy swords and shiny armor. Decked out in their golden dwarf-crafted breastplates and burgundy cloaks, the young warriors looked far more impressive than their experience would indicate. Prince Errol, as skilled as he was in the art of sparring, had never raised a sword in combat. The other 2 knights had been hand-picked by Idon based on the skill they displayed in training exercises. However, a quest such as the one they were now on required more than superior dueling techniques and military strategy. It demanded a certain wisdom possessed only by well-seasoned travelers. Fortunately, they had such experience in Cerberus and Idon to help them along. Just how far north is Picade? Vendale asked. The slightly built warrior had a strength that belied his size, but it was his cunning mind that had ultimately won him a position in the Elven Guard. It is located in the mountains north of Verilion, Cerberus answered. Why do they call it the Lost Kingdom? Errol wondered. Legend has it that about 200 years ago, the people of Picade suddenly disappeared, Cerberus replied. What happened to them? Errol asked. Cerberus could only shrug his shoulders. Idon, however, proceeded to share his knowledge of the legend. Picade was a kingdom of elves located well north of Verilion. It was said that no army could ever conquer the kingdom within the mountains because only one road provided access to the mighty nation. The road consisted of miles of tunnels and narrow passes between sheer walls of rock. Such a confined pathway would undoubtedly make for a formidable defense. Yet over 200 years ago, the nation of Picade ceased to exist. The Verilians were baffled by the sudden disappearance of their former ally. The idea of an enemy invasion has been dispelled as impossible. Something else brought doom to the kingdom of the Ice Mountains. The predominant theory is that some sort of natural disaster destroyed the kingdom, or at least cut it off from the rest of the world. Indeed, an avalanche could have done just that by blocking off a vast stretch of the path leading to the kingdom. However, stranger than the vanishing of the kingdom is the disappearance of any who set off in search of it. If the avalanche theory were true, one would think that any adventurers would simply turn back at the point of the blockade. But such is not the case. No one returns from Picade. No one. Such a strange truth brings up another, more chilling possibility. The strange disappearance of Picade and all who seek it has led people to believe that something evil now dwells there, a beast or beasts so ferocious that no one can escape once they enter the Lost Kingdom. If no one ever returns from Picade, then why would Silas want to go there? Lorien asked. The handsome, blonde-haired knight rode beside Vendale in the rear of the group. According to the legend, the people of Picade lived a very wealthy lifestyle, Cerberus answered. The promise of finding such treasures has led many a soul in search of the lost kingdom. Of course, there is another possibility that we cannot rule out, Idon added grimly. It could be that he is seeking to harness whatever evil forces may exist there. A week's ride brought the company to the Varillian capital of Idon. Though Cerebus had argued that the city was out of their way, Idon knew that King Elias would have been greatly offended if they had not paid him a visit as they passed through his kingdom. It was also an opportunity to learn if there were any rumors of insurgency in the land, the very trademark of Diax's diabolical scheming. Idon was the most ancient city in the known world. 3 times the size of Ursus and more beautiful than Argion, it had been built by the elves after fleeing the rising tide of evil in the land of their origin, Atladen. King Varillian had remained behind in Atladen to hold off the forces of the demon Draventar, while his people fled across the sea. Varillian's wife, Queen Nidoriel, clung to the faint hope that she would one day be reunited with her husband. She commissioned the construction of Idon's most notable feature, the Tower of Idoriel. Rising from the center of the city, like a pillar to heaven, the tower became the queen's sanctuary. Day and night, she would stand before the window of the tower's uppermost chamber, staring out over the vast expanse of the sea for any sign of her beloved husband. But Varillian never returned, and it was said that the queen's restless spirit continued to haunt the tower bearing her name. Idon and the knights passed under the shadow of the majestic tower as they made their way to the king's palace. While King Elias could offer them no news about the outlaws, Diaxes, or Silas, he did provide them with a grand feast and lavish accommodations to rest their weary limbs. And while the welcome they received was exceedingly warm, Cerebus accepted it rather coolly, ever eager to be on his way to the lost kingdom. The other knights were more appreciative of the king's hospitality. Indeed, it was with heavy hearts that they set off again on their journey the following day. They spent the next night in considerably less comfort in a small village on the northern fringe of the Varillian forest. By late morning of the following day, Elias's realm was just a pleasant memory. As the trees disappeared behind them, the jagged peaks of the ice mountains came into view first, as mere specks on the horizon, but slowly gaining in proportion with each mile traversed. The warriors felt a cool breeze against their skin as they rode across the northern plains. Though it was summer, the north wind still blew cold as it passed down from the ice-capped mountains. Somewhere among the frozen slopes that loomed before them was the lost kingdom of Picade, at least whatever remained of it. After a lengthy journey, the company came to the sleepy town of Pallas. During the glory years of Picade, Pallas had been a flourishing trade center. But when the mighty kingdom vanished from existence, Pallas too seemed to fade, until all that remained was a humble meeting place for herders and farmers. The focal point of the town was a rather ancient establishment called the Evergreen Inn. It had been over 200 years since the hotel had been filled to capacity. On a good day, one room was occupied. Needless to say, the innkeeper's eyes widened with joyful anticipation as he saw the 6 knights walk in. Assuming from their noble appearance that they were people of great influence, the host quickly jumped to serve his new patrons. The aged gentleman quickly extended his wrinkled hand to the visitors. "The name's Dieter. What can I do for you, fine lords?" Cerebus spoke for the group. "We will be needing rooms and a hot meal. How many nights do you plan to stay?" the innkeeper inquired. "That depends," the prince answered. "Tell me, Dieter, have any other strangers passed through here as of late?" "As a matter of fact, there was a group that came here a few days ago," the host recalled. "They were humans, not elves like you. Their leader was a tall fellow with long golden hair, probably a Nordrian." "Did he go by the name of Silas?" Cerebus asked urgently. "Yes, I believe he did," Dieter said. "Do you have any idea where they are now?" Cerebus asked. "They said they were going to the Lost Kingdom," the innkeeper replied. "Are you familiar with the tale of Picade?" "Indeed we are," Idon replied. "Then you know how foolish they are to be going there," Dieter said. "For more reasons than one," Cerebus remarked darkly. "There's only one way out of Picade. If they do not find their death there, then we shall bring it to them." Surely you do not plan to follow them into the lost kingdom? The innkeeper asked in disbelief. Indeed, to its very heart, if need be, the prince said boldly. Then you are as foolish as they are, if you'll forgive me for saying so, Dieter said. It is not my intention to offend you. I offer this warning to all who would dare to approach the kingdom in the mountains. But to you I issue a special plea. For you see, all those who came before you were wicked men seeking to steal a fortune for themselves. When those men did not return, I did not mourn. But I can tell that you are good people. It would grieve me greatly to know that you died in such a vain pursuit. We appreciate your concern, Idon said as he placed his hand on the innkeeper's shoulder, and it has been a topic of much deliberation among us. But we are going forward nonetheless, Cerberus said firmly. We are not like the men who came before us. We are not thieves or fortune hunters. We are knights. We have fought wars and faced demons. And as you said, we are good. Perhaps that alone can make the difference. Or it could make things far worse for you, Dieter said ominously. The warriors decided it would be best to wait until morning to set off for the Lost Kingdom. Cerberus and Idon retired early to rest their weary limbs. But Eberhard, Fendale, Lorien, and Errol stayed up a while longer to trade folktales with a handful of locals who had come to the inn for a drink. As the stories grew long, Errol's mind began to wander. He soon found himself staring out the nearby window. In the darkness, the small town looked as dead as ever. But then, suddenly, the prince saw a curious sight. The moonlight revealed the silhouette of an attractive maiden. At first, he dismissed the vision as a product of his daydreaming. But after blinking several times to regain the sharpness of his eyes, the figure remained. The prince became captivated as he looked upon the dark-eyed beauty. Then, much to his surprise, the mysterious maiden beckoned him. Without a word, Errol left the table and walked out the door, entranced by the gentle motion of her hand as it summoned him to her side. Errol, where are you going? Fendale asked as he watched his friend slip out the door. The door closed behind the prince before an answer could come. Actually, the prince never heard the question, dazed as he was by the maiden's beauty. But as he stood outside the inn, the maiden was nowhere to be seen. He looked in all directions before finally catching sight of a pale figure walking along the road to the north. It was the road to Picade. Without a second thought, Errol chased after the maiden. It did not take Errol long to catch up to the elusive maiden. As he approached her, the pale moonlight revealed her voluptuous figure. A snowy white gown clung to her seductive frame, leaving her alabaster arms bare. She turned to face the pursuing prince. Her glance stopped him dead in his tracks. Hers was a ravishing beauty. Deep, dark eyes and blood-red lips accented her otherwise ghostly white face. Her presence held Errol spellbound. She beckoned him once more. Again he followed, unable to resist her charms. Time and space became a blur to his clouded mind. The mysterious maiden held him in a trance. He followed her in a dreamy state and walked completely unfazed past the threshold of the mountain gate and into the dark depths of Picade.